Hello. This video will be on the importance of President Theodore Roosevelt's exploration of the River of Doubt in the Amazon, located in central Brazil. The impacts, both positive and negative, will be discussed. So who was Theodore Roosevelt? Theodore Roosevelt, also known as Teddy Roosevelt, was the 26th President of the United States who served 2 terms between 1901 and 1909. Teddy loved nature and was a true outdoors man. According to the National Park Service, he is considered the founder of the organization, one of his many accomplishments. Theodore Roosevelt ended up being the youngest president ever in the United States at the age of 42. He found his way there by being the vice president to William McKinley. McKinley was assassinated, leaving his appointment of president vacant for Roosevelt to step up to the plate and take charge of the greatest country on earth. Roosevelt made many expeditions throughout his life. Along with the Brazilian wilderness expedition that we are about to discuss, he also took a trip to Africa, where he collected an astonishing 11,400 specimens, which took the Smithsonian Museum over 8 years to sort out. Roosevelt, not only a great president, being elected for 2 separate terms, was also an avid big game hunter. So when did this exploration take place and who was involved? The crew set sail to South America on October 4th, 1913. On this journey included Theodore Roosevelt, his son, Kermit Roosevelt, an American naturalist, George Cherry, and Colonel Rondon, who found the headwaters of the river, along with 15 Brazilians. Rondon was a huge advocate for the indigenous people of Brazil, as stated by WTTW.com. Once they arrived, they set inwards to the River of Doubt, making it to the base of the river in February of 1914. So what happened on this exploration? Once the crew reached the River of Doubt, their resources had become scarce. Because of the lack of resources, the crew decided to split into 2 smaller groups. The means of transportation for this voyage, once reaching the River of Doubt, consisted of canoes that they had dug out from the trunks of trees. Once underway in their new boats, they were able to make detailed observations of their encounters down the river and make note of many new species that they were coming across that had not been identified or documented previously. As stated by naturalhistory.com, the crew was able to travel roughly 1.5 miles per day. Upon their voyage, they came across the native tribe Cinta Larga, which followed Roosevelt and the crew for the remainder of the trip, shadowing their every move. Cinta Larga brought discomfort to the crew at first because the tribe could have wiped out the entire crew at any moment, but they chose not to. As stated by History.com, Roosevelt suffered a leg injury by cutting it on a rock, and after being sick with a fever, his immune system had been compromised, which in turn contracted an infection in the leg. The infection nearly killed Roosevelt. However, the quote-unquote rubbermen, natives, who lived along the river, tended to Roosevelt and helped nurse him back to health. The expedition up the river lasted until April of 1914. Roosevelt collected an enormous variety of different species, including 2,500 bird species, 500 mammals, as well as a few reptiles, batrachians, and fish. He returned back to New York in 1914 to tell the world of what he had done. Through the Brazilian Wilderness was published shortly after. In it, the vivid details of the trip were retold. A list of supplies was provided by Roosevelt at the end of the book, along with the advice and suggestions to the next explorer describing where to go and what can be more closely studied. Unfortunately, the trip took a major toll on Roosevelt's health. His death in 1919 was believed to be partly due to the trip. So why was his journey so significant? Besides creating a geographical snapshot of the River of Doubt and that part of central Brazil, The specimens collected by Roosevelt and the crew created an outline of the ecology of the region. As stated by NPR.org, many people did not believe that Roosevelt had completed such a task at first. According to a February 1915 journal entry by Roosevelt himself in the American Museum Journal, mammals that were collected included jaguars, sometimes known to charge men after getting a taste for their meat, giant anteaters, found exclusively in South America. These mammals were the size of a small black bear and travel incredibly slow. White-lipped peccaries, pig-like mammals that traveled in groups of up to 300. To Roosevelt, these animals on one occasion chased Cherry up a tree and surrounded him for over 4 hours. Armadillos. According to Roosevelt, some were surprisingly quick. In one of the books that Theodore Roosevelt wrote, he describes many birds that he collected, with two interesting ones being the tyrant flycatcher, known for swooping down and catching insects in midair, and the blue hyacinth macaw, a vibrantly blue bird that will be brought up again later in the video. Few specimens of reptiles, insects, and fish were collected, according to the book and journal entry. One of the reptiles collected, the 10-foot-long venomous snake named the Jararaca, was the most common, along with the smaller, non-venomous Musarana snake, which was observed to eat the Jararaca, the venom having no effect on the smaller snake. The most notable insect collected was the leaf ant, that was found to eat underwear and socks, as well as a monkey eating catfish, feared and idolized by the Brazilians, according to Roosevelt. Unfortunately, the expedition had a negative impact despite all the discoveries made. According to a World Wildlife Fund article, Brazil is a hub for the exotic animal trade. High profits encourage this type of black market, along with a stigma within the country that it's only a minor crime. The blue hyacinth macaw is one of the most popular because of its beautiful blue color, its intelligence, and their rarity. These birds can be sold live as pets or dead to use their feathers and their body parts. Because Roosevelt paved the way through this region, it's only a matter of time before civilization would follow. The trading of exotic animals is nothing new. According to the article written by World Wildlife Fund, indigenous people of this region have been trading animals for a very long time. The problem arises when the over-exploitation of the animals by humans causes the population to diminish. With an ever-increasing expansion of the human population in the region, it can be inferred that the demand for these animals will also increase. Oftentimes, it is the indigenous people who trap or hunt the animals and then sell them to a network of dealers, where they are sold through a chain of traffickers to various customers around the world. The remoteness of this region also plays an important role in the success of the traffickers. Because of the region's geography, outlined by Roosevelt, poachers are able to smuggle animals along the winding network of rivers. One tactic used by the traffickers involves laundering the animal in zoos, or so-called scientific institutions, to falsely classify them as born in captivity, according to the World Wildlife Fund article. As you can see in the background of this slide, the blue hyacinth macaw, perched on the branch, looks very similar to the parrot. These birds go for upwards of $15,000. So, in conclusion, Theodore Roosevelt put his life on the line in order to further advance scientific knowledge from the region. However, despite these great accomplishments, the negative effects are weighing heavily on Brazil's wildlife. It can be said with great confidence that the impacts to the wildlife of Brazil would surely make Roosevelt disappointed.